Lee Camp, how are you, sir?
Hey, man. How you doing?
Oh, I'm excited for a Government Secrets episode 27, JFK segment number 2. Magic bullet.
When I'm in the back room and you haven't brought me on yet, I like to pinpoint which part of the opening I like the most. For me, this time, it was when you first turned it on and you said, today is, I don't know, Monday is, God only knows. It was kind of like you had like an existential crisis right as you hit record, which I relate to because I often, I'll hit go live and then I'll stare into the camera and my soul will stare back and you...
It's like, hey, everybody, welcome to the show. I'm staring into the abyss.
The abyss has taken my mental acuity, sucked it dry like a parasite.
The abyss is staring back into a horrific black hole of emptiness. Hit the like button, everybody. It's like...
But it's good to be here. It's good to talk each other off the ledge. You know, you can't go off the ledge if you have someone there with you. It's a buddy system.
It is a ledge buddy system. We had a phone call 2 days ago that was very ledgy. I think more on my end. And you gave me some sound advice. Well,
I was going to say what's interesting that's happened since our last episode, and hopefully for those of you watching that you caught the last episode. It was the first time we did an extensive thing on JFK, and in uploading it, everything went wrong on my end. On you got yours up, and then I usually take your feed and I put it on my channels as well. And so the first thing I noticed was even under your feed, so basically under all of them on YouTube, there is the largest warning label I've ever seen on a video. Ever. Larger than even my Redacted Tonight show, which has a warning label that says, the Russians are responsible for this. This warning label to talk about JFK is even bigger. And it basically gives you, are you pulling it up now?
Yeah, I'm trying to grab it.
Okay. Yeah, it basically gives you the kind of like the CIA talking points of what happened to JFK, as if that is the official version. Because now we're told whatever the blue label under a video says is what reality is. That's how YouTube wants you to view it. If there's a blue label, then that is reality. No matter what the whack jobs on the video screen may say, YouTube's got you covered. So
is this under yours or the redacted one? It's under your YouTube.
Oh yeah, it's Moment of Clarity is mine, but it's also under yours, right, on YouTube.
Yeah,
the warning label.
I didn't think the warning label. Let me check if the warning label came.
Oh, you didn't have yours titled JFK, right?
Yes, I just had.
Right, you just had Government Secrets. It's because it's titled JFK assassination. So yeah, go to youtube.com/Moment of Clarity.
Ocean. Understand.
But anyway, it says it says that Oswald killed Kennedy, and then somehow, even though it's just 3 or 4 sentences long, it manages to squeeze in there that Oswald was a Marxist and he once defected to the Soviet Union.
Unbelievable. That God, I gotta find this.
It actually says blah ha 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 on the thing.
YouTube.com what? /
Moment of Clarity. Okay. I can tell you're a regular watcher.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to my subscription. They probably just unsubscribed it.
Well, I'll vamp. For those of you out there, this is part 2 of the JFK assassination that may be have even a bigger warning label. We'll see if the warning label grows like a leech, sucking the life force out of our video with the second installment. This is a 3-part series on the assassination of JFK.
Does it have its own playlist? You have a Government Secrets playlist? Yes, you do.
I think I do.
Oh, wait. Everybody, Jesus Christ. This is horrible. You know
what this is? This is careful planning for this show is what this is.
the amount of time we spent on pre-production is really, it's impressive.
Impressive, yeah. And the number of people, I don't even want to talk about the number of people who worked on this.
Here we go. JFK
Lee
assassination. And then I'm not seeing the big caution thing.
Did they take it away?
No way. Maybe they did.
Hold on. Now I gotta go look. Hello.
Oh, there it is. Here it is. It's on one of them. You
Yeah,
put it up again. Here's the big moment of clarity thing. Okay, I'm going to take a screen grab of this right now. With this insanity.
Folks, we hope you've enjoyed the episode. That's all the time we have, but we hope you had a good time.
We really wanted to show you what it was all about. Yeah, I'm going to make this impressive. This is really clunky. Yeah, this is
But so on top of while you do that, on top of the warning label, I repost the feed and everything goes wrong. First of all, it freezes the video before I show the image that I wanted to show of Jackie Kennedy trying to grab the piece of skull off the back of the car. The video freezes and stays frozen for the next 50 minutes or whatever, like the rest of the episode. Even though the audio continues, the video freezes. Here it is.
There's a big warning. So it says, it says assassination of JFK Kennedy, Encyclopedia Britannica. So the CIA has now gotten to the Encyclopedia Britannica. Assassination of John F. Kennedy, mortal shooting of John F. Kennedy, 35th President of the U.S., as he rode in a motorcade in Dallas, Texas, November 22nd, 1963. His accused killer was Lee Harvey Oswald. So they can't even verify that, but apparently we're the crazy ones. A former U.S. Marine who had embraced Marxism and defected for a time to the Soviet Union. Oswald never stood trial for murder because while being transferred after having been taken into, and then they go into the whole long, he was murdered.
Now keep in mind, I mean, if you were looking that up in the Encyclopedia Britannica, okay, they're going to give you probably the standard definition. But keep in mind, this is YouTube against our will, plastering something across our videos to let you know that you should not believe the things we're saying. You should believe the things the CIA said.
It's fascinating. Like literally, it's probably some of the best street team marketing this show could ever get. I think it's just like, oh, here's the government not wanting one of their secrets to come out, and they've even bought up Encyclopedia Britannica to say,
well, yeah, Britannica's like Wikipedia. It's not like they have to own every fact, but on the important stuff, they're gonna give the government talking points, and if they weren't, like Wikipedia started out like more of the Wild West, and you could put, things up there that were not government talking points, but it's been co-opted. It's been taken over. I've covered it before. The Gray Zone has talked about how they're not considered a legitimate source on Wikipedia. So you basically have to link to New York Times and CNN and stuff like that to prove a fact on Wikipedia, which of course, if you're trying to prove something that CNN and New York Times are lying about, how can you link to New York Times and CNN?
I know.
But then putting the video up was just a catastrophe. I have someone who helps me, upload videos and stuff. And he said he's like spent all day on it and it just kept crashing. And he said he's never had so much difficulty putting up a video on YouTube.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then they put this thing on there. I mean, I think probably because you have, you work for RT, so they, you're on the Russia radar.
Right.
That's why they were like, oh, another Ruski trying to say that, trying to free his Ruski buddy Oswald. It's like,
well, yeah, that's step one that gets me kind of hype. They're kind of hyper alert. I mean, I would imagine if we ever were to find out what goes on and behind closed doors at Facebook and YouTube, most videos have a standard algorithm looking for terms that they find controversial, like the word terrorism or something. And then, but beyond that, there's got to be a separate list of people and outlets and entities that are on some sort of, bright red alert list that gets more heavily suppressed And you know, it has to do with entities. You know, me having a show at RT, but I think it also has to do. You know, I think it's happened to you because of all your Epstein coverage and
right. Yeah, and it's like and I've done a lot of anything anti-war. I mean, you just put Yemen in the title and done,
right,
over.
Right,
shut that down. So this is like, so I don't think the deep state understands how ridiculous they are, but just to clarify for our audience, if you're watching or listening to this, first of all, hit the like button, subscribe, give it a positive review on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you're listening. Make sure if you subscribe to one of our YouTube channels, make sure you subscribe to the other guy's channel. But just to clarify here, on a podcast called Government Secrets, we're doing a 3-part segment on the JFK assassination and the cover-up, and they stifle us from putting up a video about the cover-up of the JFK assassination, and then put a Encyclopedia Britannica says this is the fact. And even in the details of the Encyclopedia fact are, we think it's Oswald, and oh, by the way, he was murdered by Jack Ruby, a nightclub owner. So we're all just supposed to play along with this like it's normal, which is
a nightclub owner with next week's segment will involve we'll get into Jack Ruby, but a nightclub owner with CIA ties and with mafia ties, who they claim was because he was seen crying at many of these scenes, and they claim he was just real torn up about Kennedy dying.
Of course. And that's why the security guards, you know, that brought out Lee Harvey Oswald, real secure. They're just going to walk them out there, and then we'll
get this. And so this is one of the things we'll get into next week. It happened twice. They brought in, so they only had Oswald in custody, 2 days or something, maybe 3. And within that time, they march him out in front of Jack Ruby twice. The most people don't know about the first one, but it was on TV. These were 2 separate press conferences where they dragged Oswald out in front of people and said, here's Oswald. Oh man, did he kill the president? And the first time, Jack Ruby was almost definitely supposed to kill him and didn't follow through with it. For some reason, couldn't bring himself to do it because he's a CIA. He's connected to the CIA, but he was like a gun runner and things like that. He wasn't a killer. And so they kind of put him up to this, like made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Basically, it's if Oswald goes down, you're going with him. So you have to do this. And they march him in front of Oswald, in front of Jack Ruby one time. Doesn't work. So then they do a second press conference like a day later, again marching Oswald in front of people who have not been searched or like questioned or like, do you have a gun? Oh, I don't know. And the second time, Ruby follows through with it.
And I can't remember. I don't know if it's Bill Hicks or not, but there's some comic that's like, even it might have been Bill Hicks, but even you watch those guys, if you think they're not in on it, they're just like holding Ruby out at the side, like, oh, there you go, Jack. Like, just like
they're like all inching away.
There you go, pal. Like, oh, we know this is coming. Just like that famous photo, the guy that's just like, not my problem. Like, boink, you know,
Right.
Here you go, Jack. Just like throwing chum into the shark water. Right. All right. So let's get into part 2 now. We talked about last time in part 1 about basically the head wound was the main thing you focused on, was how, and the cover up from the medical examiners and the cover up of the, you know, the basically doctored x-ray showing, oh no, his skull was intact. It's like, what?
Right. Even though a large piece was found the following day. Yeah.
Right.
And someone commented on my website, they were like, this isn't true. His skull was intact. But I mentioned it, perhaps I didn't harp on it very long, but I mentioned that 21 of the 22 doctors and nurses that were at the first hospital before his body was shipped to Washington, 21 of 22 said the back of his head was blown off. So there you go. This isn't like one rogue eyewitness who got it wrong.
21 of 22.
Yeah. But so this week, so here's the thing is because there's tons of information, we could talk about this for hours and hours. I just decided to pick 3 segments that I feel like are kind of the most important things. The first one being like the fact that he was shot from the front, and possibly multiple shooters, and the cover up involved in that. This week, and like I said, next week will be Oswald and Ruby. This week, I wanted to focus on why Kennedy had to be taken out by the CIA and our military-industrial complex. What was it that made him a unique threat that they were willing to go to this level? Because obviously it had to be something that was worse than your average president making a decision the CIA didn't like. So I figured I'd focus on that this week.
Nice. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So,
first segment, second part of JFK, contradicting Encyclopedia Britannica.
Government Secrets War with YouTube, Encyclopedia Britannica.
Today's sponsor, Encyclopedia Britannica. Black and white lies for you to consume.
You can CIA everything you need to find at Encyclopedia Britannica.
You can CIA. Everything has just got CIA acronym. The Culinary Institute of America.
So, oh my God, that would be the great reveal at the end of the American Empire. It turns out the CIA was the Culinary Institute of America the whole time, and they were pulling the strings all along. Culinary Institute pulling the strings.
A bunch of chefs just really.
Listen, Guy Fieri, you're telling me he's not up to some deep state shit? Come on.
It all started with Julia Child. If she wasn't CIA, I don't know who was it. You know what I'm saying?
So, the Kennedy, I think it's important to start out with. Kennedy did not start off his presidency or his run for the presidency as like Mr. Peacenik. I want to love everyone, and we're going to make friends with the Soviet Union. And he actually ran on a pretty belligerent platform. He accused who was it he was running against?
Well, he ran against Eisenhower. It's Nixon. He ran against Nixon.
He ran against Nixon, but
Eisenhower was the president. But he
he ran against Nixon. But anyway, he was accusing the other side. I don't know specifically Nixon of not like making enough nuclear weapons. Like we needed more, and he was like fully into the Cold War. He escalated the Vietnam War, but so he starts to have a change fairly quickly. And one of the big moments is the Bay of Pigs, because he's talked into doing the Bay of Pigs, allowing these refugees with U.S. assistance to invade Cuba to try and get back Cuba for the United States and for capitalism. And they basically say to Kennedy that, oh, it's got a great chance of success. But of course, it's an utter catastrophe. These people don't at all succeed in taking over Cuba. And immediately as it's happening, the Joint Chiefs are telling him, oh my God, it's gone wrong. We have to invade Cuba. We've got to have their back of this invasion. And Kennedy refuses. He does not go along with what the military wants to do, which is invade Cuba full on. And from that point on, he is completely distrustful of the CIA and the Joint Chiefs, and they're completely distrustful of him. They also brought to his desk, side note, they brought to his desk the Operation Northwoods and asked if they could do it, which was to create bombings in Florida where that would kill civilians that they would claim were Cuban bombs. And he, when it came to his desk, he was like, you fucking out of your mind? Kill innocent Americans to create war with Cuba. So this distrust and his change of mind about the view of the CIA kind of takes place. And at one point he's quoted as saying he wants to break the CIA up into pieces and scatter it to the wind. So he becomes like a borderline enemy of the CIA. I mean, they view him as just a fucking catastrophe for their Cold War means, for their goals. And And he's also disagreeing with the Joint Chiefs. They also have a bunch of debate about preemptive strikes, nuclear strikes, where they're trying to convince him to preemptively strike the Soviet Union with nuclear warheads to stop them because they could do it to us. Like, and they're talking about, like, they have meetings where they tell him, oh, they'll probably lose 10 million citizens or something like that. And he's like, you fucking crazy. Like, he marches out of these meetings and is just furious. And I think other things were going on in his life as well that caused him to kind of have this change. Then there's the Cuban Missile Crisis, where probably another U.S. president would have ended up firing a missile, possibly getting into a nuclear missile exchange. Who knows how it would have ended.
Well, I want to interject on that a little bit. A lot of people know that the Cuban Missile Crisis was really pretty amazing now that we know about it, how JFK and Khrushchev were basically trying to kind of communicate with each other.
Yeah, I was going to go to that next. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Because they were trying to communicate because we had JFK had the Joint Chiefs of Staffs and the CIA going war, war, war. And Khrushchev had all of his generals saying basically very similar stuff. And he was like, you guys know that nobody wins in this. Like, we're all dead.
Nobody wins. Yeah.
So they were basically like communicating with each other. But, and then the other thing you said, there were some other personal reasons why JFK started to soften on the Hawk. Was that just because he was sleeping with Marilyn Monroe, or what?
I think possibly more Mary Meyer than Marilyn Monroe. Mary Meyer was also his mistress, one of his mistresses, but she was kind of the more serious one. They'd known each other forever. I think they kind of wish they had married each other rather than what ended up happening. She was married to a CIA guy. I can't remember which one, but she also was the daughter of like the former governor of Pennsylvania. Like, she was blue blood oligarchy as well. And we'll do a whole at least one episode on her later at some point. There's a great book called Mary's Mosaic that's about her assassination, which happens within a year of Kennedy getting killed. She's shot in broad daylight in the back of the head on the canal path here in DC, like an average jogging path. That's not far from where I live here, and in Georgetown, and just murdered in the middle of the day. And it's pretty clear that it was because she was starting to raise a lot of questions about Kennedy's assassination.
Oh, what's Encyclopedia Britannica? Mary Magdalene was jogging and slipped and fell on a bullet.
Mary Meyer slipped and fell, and there was a bullet on the path that lodged into the back of her head,
which happens.
It totally happens. Okay, yeah. So there's kind of there's multiple pieces that are all causing Kennedy to butt up with the CIA and the military in general, the Joint Chiefs, which you've got Russia, Cuba, Vietnam, and Indonesia. Indonesia is probably the lesser one, but so I'm going to get into each of those a bit. By the way, this is almost all of it's coming from, except for extra things we're throwing in, is coming from JFK and the Unspeakable, which everyone should check out. And this book it's got footnotes for like every sentence. It's all sourced. You can go back and read the original sources. In lots of cases, he's quoting people. So this is not just a guy, writing a blog who's like, and I just know that Oswald was in Spain on that day. So this is very well researched. So Castro was reaching out for peace. There was some back talk, some back room discussions of Kennedy meeting with Castro. And then there was Khrushchev and Kennedy. And so now I'm quoting from the book. Khrushchev and Kennedy were both going through a change, secretly corresponding to each other. Khrushchev said, quote, to Kennedy, this is one of their private correspondences, "You will be president for probably 6 more years. During that period, we could create good conditions for peaceful coexistence on Earth, and this would be highly appreciated by the people of our countries as well as by all peoples." So they were really, like you said, they both had generals that were saying we need to go to war, and yet behind the scenes, they were trying to secretly correspond and get away from another missile crisis. And then it came out after his assassination that JFK was actually planning to visit the Soviet Union. And if he did that, it really would have meant the end of the Cold War. Because simply him, the visual and the news reports of him going over there and shaking hands with Khrushchev would have likely meant the end of the Cold War. And Kennedy's friend, the British ambassador David Ormsby Gore, said in the last conversation he ever had with Kennedy that Kennedy said he had made up his mind to visit the Soviet Union at the first suitable moment. So let's see.
Oh, this show sometimes when you see like when we do, it's like this is like the Henry Wallace episode where we're like, hey, here was a chance at total world peace and society working together to make a world a better place. Nope, the psychos hijacked it and we're just war for the rest of our lives. So thank you, deep state, you soulless cocksuckers. You bloodlust, soulless cocksuckers. I just want you to know that when you die, you will be in hell and you're going to get butt fucked on a lake of fire by the devil because you're this evil. I know you're listening. I just want you to know there is repercussions to what you're doing. You can shut us down. You can whatever you want to do, but that is going to happen because I know you're Christians. So just know you're going to get butt fucked by the devil in a lake of fire. I'm sorry, Lee, you were saying.
Unless you're into that, and then it'll be a different orifice. No.
When you're not into, if that's like turns you on, then it's going to go maybe.
But you're absolutely right that it does. Like it seems like there's multiple times in U.S. history where it's like we're on the brink of like peace, like actually having peace, not a cold war, not a hot war, like peace, and then it's fucking taken away at the last second by these incredibly powerful interests who are kind of working behind the scenes.
Just imagine for a second. I'm sorry, but just imagine for a second, had this peaceful thing happened, had Khrushchev and JFK, and then we ended the Cold War, and then we just worked together. And now we're just talking about, wow, Russia and America are leading the charge to stop climate collapse.
Right.
And these two countries that have been peaceful with each other since the early 60s, thanks to JFK and Khrushchev. Wow, look at what we're doing. We have great trade relations and we're sharing all these amazing ideas. Oh, when the pandemic hit, we're all working together. We all found a great vaccine together and we're ending climate change thanks to them. And we're bringing China into the fold. And so now we're just going to have green energy all over the planet. Oh, wait. Oh, it's better to profit from destroying the earth because we're stupid.
Short-term greedy.
Yep, short-term greedy, long-term stupid.
Yeah, long-term horrific.
Yes.
And so Kennedy, despite having amped up the Vietnam War, he was now having this shift, and he was having discussions about ending involvement in Vietnam. Assistant Press Secretary Malcolm Kilduff said that 2 days before he was killed, JFK said to him in the Oval Office, quote, "We're losing too damn many people in Vietnam. It's time for us to get out. The Vietnamese aren't fighting for themselves. We're the ones who are doing the fighting. After I come back from Texas, that's going to change. There's no reason for us to lose another man over there. Vietnam is not worth another American life," end quote. So that is the assistant press secretary's memory of exactly what Kennedy said to him before heading off to Texas.
Boy, you know, that memo got intercepted and they're like, well, someone's not coming back from Texas. How's that?
Yeah, exactly. And then there was also Indonesia, where President Sukarno, now Indonesia was communist. President Sukarno was a socialist, and he used a lot of anti-American rhetoric, and anti-American empire. On top of that, there were many corporate profits to be made in Indonesia. So that's never good. Look behind you. If you have a lot of resources that we could exploit, you better watch your back. Mm-hmm. But Kennedy wanted peace and said he was open to meeting with Sukarno and would go to Indonesia the following spring. And he also said that days before he was killed. So this would have been this. I mean, if you look at Castro, Khrushchev, and Sukarno and Vietnam, this would be ending the Cold War, or in Vietnam, the Hot War, against, communism and basically countries with a different economic system. It would end that dynamic on most of the major fronts. Even let's assume that some of the rhetoric would continue about we need to stop communism, but for the most part, these meeting these world leaders, showing that we could work with them, it would have completely changed the way things were headed. And then after, and by the way, on each of these fronts, we see what happened just about immediately after Kennedy was killed. You see a reverse course on all of these things. Kennedy is killed, and Johnson reversed course obviously didn't withdraw from Vietnam. Vietnam just kept getting worse. The standoff with the Soviet Union remained horrible, and with Cuba as well. And Kennedy also reversed course on Indonesia. He ended economic aid to Indonesia, except for continuing military aid to General Suharto, who was basically the opposite side of things. He was a kind of a U.S. puppet. I mean, I don't know if he was a full puppet, but he was the guy we were supporting to crush Sukarno. And so with covert support of the U.S. military, General Suharto was preparing to overthrow Sukarno. In October 1965, the CIA finally succeeds, so this is after Kennedy's death, in toppling Sukarno and then helping to destroy the Communist Party of Indonesia, which is a fucking massacre. Estimates of the number of deaths that occurred as a result of the CIA operation run from 500,000 to more than 1 million. As admitted later by the former deputy CIA station chief in Indonesia, the U.S. Embassy helped the new government compile death lists of thousands of members of the Communist Party. And then there's this jaw-dropping quote by Robert Martins, a political officer in the U.S. Embassy in Jakarta. But this is 25 years after the fact. So this is when, 25 years go by and these people start to feel like they can reveal some of the reality. So 25 years after the fact, he said, quote, "It really was a big help to their army. They probably killed a lot of people, and I probably have a lot of blood on my hands, but that's not all bad. There's a time when you have to strike hard at a decisive moment." So this is like the classic American story of we act like we own other countries, no matter who they are, no matter who their people are. We act like we own them and they need to behave the way we want them to. And if they don't, then it's kind of our right to kill 1 million people.
Oh, yeah. Suharto was a brutal dictator that was in power, I think, even through the 80s in Indonesia. And he butchered and tortured people. I mean, just brutal, just in horrific means. But because we backed him, and he gave us, that's the good old American playbook. If you give us your resources or geographic, location to put bases on or whatever, you can literally do whatever you want. You can do what we don't care. You can chop up journalists and scatter them in a garden. You can treat women like second-class citizens.
And not even don't care, like help them do it. We kept like death lists for them. Like, here are the list of people that you need to go do whatever it is you do.
Yeah. And like, it was a horrific time in Indonesia's history that we helped perpetuate. So our tax dollars help do that. But by the way, I just got my $600 Visa debit card in the mail. So that's, yeah, that's going to pay my rent for the next 6 months.
Guess who's getting a new Nissan Leaf?
Yeah, I think you could buy like 10 Leafs for $600. Basically
the new model has 7 cup holders. But it only accepts green juice. If you try and put something else in there, it actually has an eject button. It'll shoot it at you.
Basically, you just tie a kite to the antenna, and then the kite like kind of pulls you along on the road. So it's really great. It's a great.
The new kite-powered Leaf. It sounds amazing.
Oh God!
But yeah, back to this. So back to this. He's a political officer of the U.S. Embassy, talking about a lot of blood on my hands. But oh well, it was the thing we needed to do. We needed to strike decisively, and to me, this isn't just about that moment. This says a lot about the kind of the U.S. empire, how we rule over these places. And like, if you think like that, if you are of the sociopathic belief that 1 million people could die, but it's cool because it's for our power and we're America and this will help us, then you rise up the ladder. You end up at a higher position in our government because you think like that. Like, and that's how he gets to the point where he's in this embassy. Like, it is, and you can also understand how people would believe that these same folks could kill JFK. Like, if they're thinking, I'll kill 1 million people so that there's no communism in Indonesia, then what would stop them from thinking, well, we got to kill the president who's getting in the way of our having as many capitalist countries that bend over to our needs as we want?
These people, I mean, yeah, killing 1 million people and killing the like what? Like, it's just like a serial killer. Like, after they've killed their first person, then they just get a taste for it and they just keep going. Only our serial killers run the government. And, they kill, millions of people and they're considered heroes or patriots. And it's just like, these are psychos, man. These are full on psychos. You're participating in the murder of 1 million people. I mean,
yeah.
And like, oh, this guy that wants peace, we need to kill the guy that wants peace. How deranged is that? Like, I just like, it's like working in a hospital and like, oh, that patient over there is in pain. Well, better give him more pain, I guess, right? Isn't that how we're going to work this hospital of the CIA? Like, it's unbelievable to me.
So speaking of psychos, our old friend Truman shows up in an interesting manner.
Our old pal Truman.
Now, as we covered on a previous episode, he was not a good person. Okay. He very much enjoyed dropping the atomic bombs, as far as we could tell. Very, very racist, in general, but however, he seemed to be having some second thoughts about a little outfit that he created called the CIA. And he, so 1 month after, and this is amazing because of how public it is. This is not like some secret note. 1 month after JFK's assassination, former President Truman publishes an op-ed in the Washington Post warning about the danger of the CIA taking over the government. Now, do you think that maybe JFK's assassination clicked something in Truman's head where he was like, I think I know who might have done this? So he writes this op-ed warning about the danger of the CIA taking over the government. He wrote, quote, "For some time, I've been disturbed by the way the CIA has been diverted from its original assignment. It has become an operational and at times a policy-making arm of the government. This has led to trouble and may have compounded our difficulties in several explosive areas." Now, I feel like you couldn't be more obvious in what you're hinting at if he had written explosive areas like JFK's exploded head, like
Vietnam, like other places. Like, I had no idea that weird that this isn't ever covered. This wasn't covered in the history. Is this an Encyclopedia Britannica?
Yeah. Is that what's the bottom of our video? Yeah. And not only is it not talked about now, but it was met with almost silence at the time that it came out. It was almost completely ignored, except by people connected to the CIA. They took notice of it. So Allen Dulles, who, let me just pause here and say, Allen Dulles was the head of the CIA. When Kennedy got in this back and forth and wanted to crush the CIA, he fires Allen Dulles. Allen Dulles is then on the Warren Commission. Why would you put the guy from the CIA who Kennedy hated so much he fired him at the Warren Commission to write the report on who killed Kennedy?
Wow.
So Dulles takes leave from his duties at the Warren Commission. Again, this is a month after JFK has been killed, and went to visit Truman in Missouri. So he gets on a plane from D.C. to Missouri because this op-ed clearly upset him so much, being former head of the CIA. And he goes to Missouri and he meets with Truman. And then what we have in the public record now that's been declassified are his notes as to what he was said at that meeting. He claims in the notes that Truman disavowed the op-ed and it didn't reflect his views at all, which is utter horseshit. He basically, Dulles was writing this for the benefit of them in the future to be able to show these notes and say that Truman disavowed this op-ed. But in fact, that doesn't jive with Truman's own notes that led to the op-ed. So they now have publicly, you can go apparently view them or at least they're at the Truman Library. I don't know if you can see them, but they're at the Truman Library. His notes that were written 3 weeks before the op-ed published. And if you do the math, Truman's notes 3 weeks before the op-ed was published is 1 week after Kennedy is killed. So Kennedy is killed. Truman sits down and jots notes about how the CIA is taking over the government. And Truman's notes, of course, say the same thing his op-ed said, showing that he didn't disavow it. He repeated comments going forward about how the CIA's purpose was supposed to be intelligence gathering when he created them. And they clearly were doing slightly more than intelligence gathering. But to me, this is so important because not only does it show that Truman likely thought the CIA was involved, but also if the real story, if the bullshit state story of what happened to Kennedy were true, why would Dulles be afraid? Why would Dulles go running to Missouri to say, you got to disavow this?
Of course. I mean, there's just so much evidence on Scott. This is all new stuff I didn't know about the JFK assassination. This is fantastic. But yeah, it makes a great point because look, we know for a fact it was Lee Harvey Oswald. Be like, Truman, the old man's off his rocker again, probably just playing too much poker with his Klan buddies. So that's why he wrote this op-ed piece.
Did they finally let him in after he was president?
Like, now you're in, Mr. President. Now we'll let you in. Yeah, it makes none of this makes any sense. It's like the Jack Ruby argument doesn't make any sense. He was just an angry citizen or whatever. And so, yeah, why would Dulles do this? Why did Dulles's notes completely contradict Truman's notes? And did Truman, after the Dulles meeting, retract his statements or put out a new statement or anything?
No, there's other quotes from him later in life, like as his life continues, saying the same thing, that the CIA had gotten too powerful and he worried about what they were involved in and that they were meant to be an intelligence gathering outfit.
Wow. It's so blatant. I always think of The Sopranos. Like, I think of this episode of The Sopranos when I forget his name, but he was the guy that the actor was he ran the comedy club in Vegas, the big dude. Goes to meet with this union guy or something like that, and he sits down and he goes, "Oh, hey, you're the union boss. I heard you're gonna vote for this guy." And he goes, "I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to intimidate." He goes, "Man, if I voted for the guy you're gonna vote with, I couldn't live with myself. I'd put a bullet in my head here, here, and here." And the guy shakes, and then he pays for his drink and walks out. And of course, the guy votes in favor of the mob guy or whatever. And I was like, that's just how the CIA operates. They're just like, oh, be a real shame if you were on a parade and a magic bullet came flying around swung around and got you and a couple other people. That'd be a real shame. It's just like, that's how this is like the CIA is just like the mob. You know what I mean?
Right. So now imagine that instead of just voting for the wrong guy, Kennedy is ending the Cold War and completely reversing track with four of the most important fucking international situations. And you just see how critical it was for this now military industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about, the CIA that Truman warned us about, why they warned us, because now let's cut to 50 some years later. We have a completely out of control military. We spend more than the next 10 countries combined.
We have both parties that have been completely bought out and hijacked by these companies. We have corporate media, like literally MSNBC and Fox and all them are always showing ads for Raytheon and Boeing, which is like, why is Boeing advertising on a big corporate media? Is anyone at home going, oh, honey, the new F-35s are in? Like, no.
I know. That's my favorite thing is them advertising on all these channels as if those ad dollars have any point other than to just buy that network, like own that network.
And we see it. Like, we can't even get to, I literally got $600. We couldn't even get $2,000, but we always have money for war. We can't pay for Medicare for all, but we always have money for war. And it's what these guys all saw, whatever their backgrounds, whatever they initially saw, they saw this get out of control. Because here's the thing about Eisenhower, Truman, and Kennedy. They all either directly served in World War II, or at least were around it enough to see how awful it was. And they saw what a world war looked like. And with the invention of the atomic bomb, they saw like, oh man, this is no joke anymore. This isn't just armies fighting. This could like wipe out life on planet Earth. And they were like scared. They were all like, this is.
Yeah, it was, I think I remember in the atomic bomb episode we did, what it was like 6 of 7 generals, I think, of the 7 5-star generals or something in World War II said that the atomic bombs didn't need to be dropped.
Yeah. Yeah. When we did the episode about how we could have, Japan wanted peace and we, Truman wanted to drop the A-bomb. And even after he did that, maybe he had like, oh, wow, maybe that was a little much or whatever moment of clarity he had. And now he's sitting there. I'm just guessing at this point, but he's sitting there after having been out of office for quite a while, late in life. And he's watching the war machine keep going on. And he's like, I got to write this op-ed piece about the CIA. And then ding dong. Oh, Alan Dulles, what are you doing?
Hi, Alan. How you doing?
What were you in the neighborhood? Yeah, I just happened to pop by. There was a couple of CIA plants I wanted to.
So I got one more point about before we can wrap this one up. So to go back to Kennedy's relationship with the Soviet Union, he's, as we said, he's got these overtures and these backdoor texts or whatever messages going with Khrushchev, and he also gave a speech. This is June 10th of 1963, and it's now become a famous speech among anybody who researches this stuff. But at the time, it was largely ignored. But he gives a commencement speech at American University, June 1963, so a few months before his assassination, and basically says that we need peace with the Soviet Union. That we should let their people live and we should, live the way they want. And he, talks about peace, poetically. And he also talks about the contributions that the Soviet Union has given us, such as the 27 million that were killed in World War II. He talks about how much they lost in World War II, and that's by default comparing it to what we lost, which we lost less than 500,000 in World War II, less than 400,000, I think. And
we lost around. I did a video on this. We lost roughly 415,000 soldiers, military, and then another 4,000 kind of civilians in Pearl Harbor. So we lost 419,000 people total, which
less than we've lost to COVID-19.
Yes.
Which is horrifying as well.
Yes. Correct. And the Soviet Union lost 20 some million people. They lost 1 million soldiers and another 10 million civilians or something like crazy like that.
Yeah. So anyway, you could imagine one of our presidents now giving this speech. It would be fucking, people would lose their goddamn minds. And I'm sure internally they did even back then. But so, if you want to go read why Kennedy had to be killed in the view of the military industrial complex and the CIA, go read that speech. But Here's a kind of the final jaw-dropping fact is that the Kennedy family, I mentioned already how his mistress, Mary Meyer, didn't believe that Oswald had killed him, believed it was CIA, and we need to do it. We'll be doing an episode in not too long on her assassination. But the Kennedy family, Jackie, Robert Kennedy, they seem to have known that it wasn't Oswald who killed him. William Walton was a close friend of the Kennedy family. And so after JFK's assassination, he was sent to Moscow on behalf of RFK and Jackie Kennedy to deliver a secret message, kind of a final message to Khrushchev in back channels. And the Kennedy's message to the Russians was kept top secret until the 1990s. So we only found out in the 1990s what was said between the Kennedy family and Khrushchev as a final word to him. And the Kennedys were relaying the message to Khrushchev, and the message said that, quote, despite Oswald's connections to the communist world, there was a large political conspiracy behind Oswald's rifle that came from a different source. The president was felled by domestic opponents, unquote. He had been, according to the Kennedys, quote, the victim of a right-wing conspiracy, unquote. So at that time, they didn't know that Oswald didn't shoot Kennedy, but they knew that even if he did, he was connected to a large right-wing internal domestic plot to kill JFK.
So it sounds like the Kennedy family needed to read Encyclopedia Britannica.
Man, they were not readers. They didn't look up what actually happened. So
they weren't big readers. The Kennedy.
Yeah.
They weren't reading like 3 books a week or whatever. Yeah.
So you can see why, with that kind of knowledge, RFK had to be taken out. Mary Meyer had to be taken out. The cleanup of this assassination is immense. I haven't read it, but I know there's a long list of people that are connected to the JFK assassination or eyewitnesses or whatever that either ended up dead very young or in one case, I think I'm going to talk about next week, were locked in a mental hospital for the rest of their lives. The cleanup was pretty immense. I mean, the Mary Meyer one alone is pretty horrific.
Oh, so
good times.
Good times. You know what I mean? Really, I think of the song, I'm proud to be an American, where at least I'm free. It really
maybe we should I know we got one more story we're gonna go through, but maybe we should wrap up these episodes each week with like 5 minutes of just kind of like affirmations, just like, but also, folks, you're good enough, you're smart enough. This land is my land. This land is your land. We're all in this together.
Oh,
and things are looking up.
Just breathe. I mean, honestly, I gotta tell you is, and maybe we can just touch on this briefly, is the shit that the shit that subreddit group did to those hedge funds. I mean, I've been laughing for 2 days straight. Like, that gives me so much hope. I heard one of these hedge funds, I think it was Melvin one, they lost $70 billion, which is just like, oh, I'm sorry.
How much did they have?
Well, they
70 billion.
They lost. I mean, it might be a total loss of all the hedge funds, but one of them, the Melvin one, had to vomit up a bunch of money because they kept buying these shorts, which they bought more stocks than were out there. There was 140% of the actual stocks available. They bought them. So when the price kept going up and going up, they had to cough up and pay for these. So they lost a bunch of money, which is like,
oh my God. So
Beautiful.
So I did a live stream a couple days ago on this, and I had on Ton Liu, who's the author of The Ponzi Factor, which is a great book for like non-economists, non-math people. You know, you say a number and I pass out and hit my head on the desk, kind of people, where it just very simply explains how the stock market is a Ponzi scheme, like the dictionary definition of a Ponzi scheme. It is not, when it first started, when the idea of the stock exchange first started, it was this idea that you invest in a company, they then give you a piece of their profits, which are now called dividends. And the dividends that are paid nowadays are minimal, and a lot of companies don't pay them. Like it's almost non-existent. So what it has become is not that. You don't own a piece of the company. You own a piece of paper that says Google on it that means nothing. It is worth nothing unless you get somebody else to fall for the scam and buy it from you. And that's fine. You can make money that way, but that is called a Ponzi scheme. That is the dictionary definition of a Ponzi scheme, meaning there is no money coming into this system unless you get new people to buy in. And the moment people stop buying in, the fucking house of cards collapses. And that level of abstraction is then doubled when you have people betting on whether not actually buying the stock, but betting on whether the stock will go up, or, you know, shorting it or whatever. And so really what these people did was play with this completely fraudulent system in a way that has thwarted the rich and, you know, benefited those who are lower class. And that is why our oligarchy, many of them, chose to shut down the trading platforms to stop this kind of democratization of Wall Street, because 80% of stocks are owned by 10% of people. Right. And this is kind of the other 20% getting in on the action and fucking over those 10%.
It was so beautiful. And the fact now that there's a bunch of Robinhood investors now filed the class action lawsuit yesterday. So for those who don't know, Robinhood is a platform where you can trade, and they shut off the trading ability for GameStop, AMC, maybe some others, to basically stop this from happening. And so people can make legitimate claims because they bought GameStop low and everybody bought in, thanks to this Wall Street Bets Reddit page, and the stock went up. And then when some of them were trying to sell off, all right, we made our money, Robinhood froze it. So they literally can prove we lost money. You know, like I bought it at whatever, $20. It went up to $500. When I wanted to sell it, you wouldn't allow me to. And I lost money. So that's it's Robinhood, you know, which of course is they build themselves as this app. So cool, young hipster millennials can buy stocks. And
we named ourselves that because we take from the rich and give to the poor, unless you start to actually win, and then we shut it off.
Then the rich are going to call us and go, hey, shut that down. And then Janet Yellen steps in, and Janet Yellen's got $810,000 from, I have the story right here.
For speeches, right?
Yeah, well, she's gotten $7 million in speeches to all these big banks, right? And yesterday...
But that's no conflict of interest, is it?
No, not at all. And when they asked Joe Biden's press secretary yesterday, a reporter said, isn't this a conflict of interest? He said, well, I don't think we should, you know, she's a tops in her field, so of course she's going to get paid, you know, good dollars. Next question. It's like, you didn't answer it. We weren't asking, did she deserve it? And
so it's, Graham, it's only a conflict of interest if the person sucks in their field.
Yeah, that's she's good in her field. Like you didn't answer the question. And it was so funny because the majority of the reporters in the room were women. The press secretary is a woman. And she was like almost trying to take the angle of like, oh, so a woman, men. It's like, well, no, you can't play that angle because all the reporters were female. There's like one male reporter in the room. So what angle are you going to play here? No, Janet Yellen.
But vagina.
Yeah. Janet Yellen, regardless of her gender, is corrupt as every other.
Right. That's also my favorite argument when they're bombing innocent civilians. But the bombs were unleashed by a vagina, so it's fine.
Yes, if it has a rainbow flag and Black Lives Matter on the bomb, the people in the Middle East are happy. They high-five diversity right before everything goes dark.
I'm sorry, but I'm more woke than that. I don't see genitals. Don't even see them. Don't even see it. It makes it awkward sometimes when I'm sucking on someone's shoulder, but
well, yeah. So Melvin Capital, this is a quick little GovSeek from the GameStop thing. And I'm going to probably do a full segment on it for my show, but they got emergency backstop investment from Citadel. Well, she was paid $810,000 by Citadel to give speeches. So that's why Janet Yellen, new Secretary of Treasury, first ever female Secretary of Treasury, came in and was like, whoa, stop these online hooligans from gaming the system the same way the hedge funds do. So that's our new Secretary of Treasury and all of the diversity that she's bringing. It's fantastic.
Right. I mean, the whole system is based on massive exploitation. I mean, that's the big grand secret of Wall Street. It is just a massive level of exploitation, and it's been turned on its head this time. And of course, that can't happen. You can't have the lower classes, middle class, poor people exploiting the rich.
Yeah, and it's funny, when the housing crash hit, and along with upwards of 6 million people lost their homes, or 6 million foreclosures, which is like 6 million families, and my home being one of them. I don't remember this outcry for justice by the Secretary of Treasury and all these other dipshits. I don't remember that. I don't remember these like, we need more regulation. And I
also don't remember them putting a freeze, like a permanent freeze on foreclosures.
Yeah, they didn't freeze foreclosures. It's weird. They didn't say you can't foreclose on homes anymore. All that stimulus money that we've given you, you actually need to give it to the people to keep them in their homes. That never happened. Huh. I just can't figure out why. I guess it was an oversight.
Funny how that works.
Yeah, it's weird. They must have just, one of those things fell through the cracks, everybody gets busy. It's one of those like,
that's why Eric Holder didn't press any charges on Wall Street after the collapse. He was just, it was a post-it note, and it ended up under, it ends up other post-it notes end up on top. Yeah. And you just don't, and then you throw away the top one thinking it's just one, and it turns out it was stuck to it.
Yeah.
That's why he didn't prosecute any bankers.
The prosecute one was stuck and he didn't see it. Okay, I get it. That makes sense. I totally get it. Yeah. I totally get it.
Understand. These people are human. Let's be honest.
Yeah, back off. Don't be so hard on them. Don't be so hard on the puppets of the oligarchy whose job is it every morning to screw over the 99% in every way, shape, or form, and then blame it on the 99% when that happens. Anyway, do we have another segment? I forget.
Well, let's just squeeze one in here real fast about
Government Secret's final segment.
About Joe Biden saying he's going to get rid of all big oil subsidies. And if it were to happen, now these are words. So I would remain highly skeptical as big oil goes running to the White House breathlessly, banging on the door. Whoa! Let's not be rash here, friend. If this were to happen, it would be a big deal, but I think it should go with an understanding that the American government, meaning our tax dollars, fund big oil and many of the biggest corporations, but big oil to the tune of tens of billions of dollars, meaning we are subsidizing our own extinction by climate change. And if you include in other corporations by other, our own poisoning in the waters, our own fucking poisoning of the air, we fund these things. So when we run around and say, we've got to stop climate emissions, we got to get off big oil or whatever, everyone should keep in mind that so far, unless Biden follows through with this, we are actually giving billions of dollars in welfare to keep big oil profitable.
But Lee, what about oil jobs?
Yeah, because I had heard that there cannot be ever jobs doing anything positive for the world. It's
Right.
Because if you give a guy a job planting a tree, it's just he'll probably kill himself. So, yeah, only oil jobs and military jobs. Those are the only kind of jobs there are.
Oh, this country.
I mean, the jobs argument has to be one of the stupidest arguments out there, because anything's a job if you pay someone to do it. Like, if we pay, what if our government were to say tomorrow, hey, we're going to pay people $1,000 a week to just give everybody high fives, and then people will feel good and it'll be a real positive experience. All right, then you'd have 1 million new people making money, putting money back into the society, having a job, feeling good about themselves, making other people feel good because they're giving high fives.
And the other thing too, I love, like even Wolf Blitzer said this, what if we get rid of oil jobs? I've seen these people. I was debating with a guy on some dumb neoliberal on Crosstalk was like, well, if we get rid of fracking, we're losing fracking jobs. I love that argument because it's like, oh, so you've never read like a page in a history book. Like, it's like, oh no, where are all the blacksmiths going to go if we create these horseless carriages that we're talking about? Where are they going to go? It's like, oh, so we don't innovate anymore in this country? We can't find a new thing for people to work in? Like, what happened? Oh, great. Here we go now. So all the people printing phone books, we're just going to get rid of their jobs. They're just going to throw them out on the street. Like,
well, you might not know this, but even today, we still pay 10,000 workers to run rickshaws around just in circles because we don't want to get rid of the rickshaw jobs. So they just run them around in circles.
Well, the rickshaw lobby is pretty powerful, so they spend a lot of money every year to keep rickshaws going. It's the same with the typewriter repairman lobby. They do great. They just really got a stranglehold on both parties.
You know what that just reminded me of is since you've been in many old collapsing comedy club, Dangerfield's Comedy Club in New York, where I used to perform all the time, they had not washed a drape in 40 years. Like, you could still see Rodney Dangerfield's like cum stains on the couches.
Like there's just nothing, but just like it would look like if you brought one of those like CSI blue lights, it would just it would look like a Jackson Pollock. It would just be horrific. Just that and cocaine.
It would look like one of those laser light shows. There'd be so much reflection off the surfaces. But you mentioned the typewriter repairman. They used to have, when I first started working there, they still had a wooden payphone on the wall. Like the outer box was made out of wood and the like parts of it. And it looked like a cool antique. I was like, that's awesome to keep that antique there or whatever. But apparently they had called like around the same time. So we're talking 2010 or something. They had called AT&T to say, hey, we need that repairman to come fix the wooden payphone. It's not working. And AT&T did some research and got back to them and said, we're sorry, we can't come to repair it because the last guy who knew how to fix one of those wooden payphones died recently.
So the last wooden payphone repairman passed on. And now, so what are they?
They don't fix them anymore.
Oh, it's a good thing that Roddy, that Dangerfields didn't think, hey, maybe we should just update some of our technology. God forbid the comedy club ever does that. Like,
hey, that wooden payphone was actually younger than some of the bits that the comedians were doing there. So,
and there's a lot of history in all of the cocaine and gunpowder that's on that payphone. So
it's true. It's true.
You don't want to get rid of that. It should go in the Smithsonian.
Yeah. Yep. All right, man. I think we did it. I think we could get ready to see how much this is suppressed and what kind of warning label is plastered across this one, because YouTube now owns truth.
YouTube now has the definitive truth on the Kennedy assassination. So that's really exciting to know that this thing that is still disputed by many, many people with very knowledgeable things. So the author of this book that you've been quoting during these two-part series, that guy's wrong, but YouTube, which is owned by Google, which has been working with the CIA since 2011, no connection to any of this, by the way.
Nope.
They're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And
all-
all these quotes from people connected to the Kennedy family and everything like that. They don't have anything on Encyclopedia Britannica. So.
yeah, the Kennedy family, they're just a bunch of wingnuts. They're just, what could they possibly know? They're just the Alex Jones of families that have had two of their major people assassinated by the CIA. What could they possibly know?
Two people. I think if you go to the distant reaches of this Kennedy family, I think they've lost like 14 people or something.
Really?
I don't. I mean, I just know that people are dying like left and right, like JFK Jr. and
Right.
Ted Kennedy killed that woman. You got recently that another Kennedy died. I think that one was a legitimate death, but she on the canoeing accident this past year. What I can't remember her name, but she went out on the water with her son and to try and fetch a ball, and they both died or something.
Of course, there was something. Well,
you know what it was? The Kennedys, they spit on a monkey's paw in a Korean antique shop one time, and it's never been good for them since.
Yeah, like Joe Kennedy when he was 9 did it in like 1875 or something like that, and then ever since, this is how it's been shaking out. So don't spit on a Korean monkey's paw, guys. That's a lesson to be taken away from today's episode.
For everybody listening, I hope you'll go back, listen to part 1. We'll have part 3 next week. These, as you can tell, these episodes, many of them are pretty much evergreen, or at least large chunks of the episode are evergreen. And you can go back and learn from the previous episodes. Please try and share them, although you might receive a minor shock through the keyboard. That's the latest thing they're doing if you try and share our videos. Please pass it on. Let people know that you're getting all the deeply banned and censored information from us.
And we found this out this past week. We're the 15th most listened to podcast in Slovenia. So
boom!
Eat it, number 16, whatever show that is. Boom!
I meant to tell you I put $10,000 into advertising, but only in Slovenia. Is that cool?
It seems wise. That's a market we need to get them. If you're listening in Slovenia, you have to make us number 1 in Slovenia. You have to. We have to sell t-shirts that say number 1 in Slovenia. We have to make that a goal. So, please make that happen. Because maybe the CIA can't.
I was told the 2 most famous people from there. Is it Slovenia? I think so. Is it Melania from there? Is Melania Trump and Slavoj Žižek. By the way, never see them in the same room at the same time. You notice that? I think they're the same person.
It really is weird. And let's just hope now that Lee Camp and Graham Elwood are the most famous people in Slovenia. That's what we have to make. That has to be a goal of the show. And if it doesn't happen, we failed as a show.
All right, man. I appreciate the hang.
Yeah, buddy. Where can people check out all your stuff?
It's all leecamp.com. Unfortunately, because of COVID issues, we had no Redacted Tonight this week or last week, but we'll be back next week with a new Redacted Tonight. And anyway, it's all leecamp.com.
All right. All my stuff's at grahamelwood.com. My show, Political Vigilantes, on YouTube. And, of course, subscribe to rockfin.com. The premium, where you can get my content, Lee's content, everybody else is included in your $10. So that's our show. We'll have more Government Secrets episode, final chapter, next episode of the JFK trilogy.
That sounds much less gory than it is in reality. But
yeah, I know this. The reality is pretty horrific. All right, buddy. Well, good seeing you again. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Bye, dude.